began yesterday. I worship at the altar of the Ice Mage. I hope that the Ice Gods will annoy me with the power of cryomancy. But in the meantime, I heard something that very upset me. I heard some beats in my head that really didn't jive with me. The vibes weren't right. My favorite video game company, aka my favorite video game company, aka Marv's favorite video game company, aka Orasama Marv's favorite video game company, Capcom. There's a rumor about Crapcom. There's a rumor about Sapcom. There's a rumor about Japcom that they're gonna remake Resident Evil 4. Resident Evil 4? Quattro? Quattro? Uno, dos, cuatro? Ah! Why did this upset me? Why did this upset me? Why am I upset about this? Why I'm not happy about this? Resident Evil 4 is my favorite game of all time. Why am I not happy? Why am I not happy? Ah! Ah! Been busy writing the villainy Bible, and I foresaw this problem, as you should. Bro, why are you gonna remake Resident Evil 4? There's nothing to be remade about Resident Evil 4, Capcom. Why don't you go remake Code Veronica, Capcom? Crapcom. Why are you gonna remake Resident Evil 4? Why is remaking Resident Evil 4 an issue? Why is that an issue? Why is that even an issue? Why is it even an issue? Why is it an issue? The best game? Why are you gonna remake Resident Evil 4? Why? Listen, there's like something inherently incorrect about saying even it being a rumor. And the problem with that is that Resident Evil 4 is a perfect game. There's nothing inherently wrong about Resident Evil 4. In actuality, you can say that Resident Evil 4 is the most balanced video game of all time, all crimes, all slimes. Resident Evil 4 is so perfectly paced. Resident Evil 4 is so perfectly maced. Resident Evil 4 does not need to be remade. And I just had a rant the other day about Resident Evil 8 being called Village, because that was the whole gimmick about Resident Evil 4. So why are you making Resident Evil 8 and calling it Resident Evil Village if Resident Evil 4 already have Village in the game? You have villages. You can shoot people in the village. It doesn't make sense. Okay, Resident Evil 4, judging by what they just did with Resident Evil 3, and the people who remade Resident Evil 3 are remaking Resident Evil 4 apparently, and they did not do that good of a job with 4. They didn't do that good of a job with 4. So you're gonna give them Resident Evil? You're gonna give them Wait, what? You're gonna give them Resident Evil 4 to remake now? Why you skip Code Veronica? Why'd you skip 0? Why are you going straight to 4? It doesn't make sense. Okay, in a world where I think it can make sense, why would you remake Resident Evil 4? I'm thinking from a design standpoint, a modern video game maker standpoint. You can't move and shoot in Resident Evil 4. Maybe they want you to be able to move and shoot. The inventory, you gotta press start for everything. You wanna change your gun, press start. You wanna heal, press start. You wanna use an item, press start. You have to press start for everything in Resident Evil 4. Or go to the item menu. I don't know what button it was. I don't remember. But I remember you do have to go to the inventory for everything in that game. Also, another reason, the textures in Resident Evil 4 are dirty looking. They look nasty by today's standards. The textures are pretty muddy looking. They look really bad. Even in the HD versions, the textures are not beautiful. They're not good looking. I can understand you want to modernize it, you want to make it good looking. The dialogue is kind of goofy. I can understand goofy looking dialogue. It might be like, hey, if a modern person plays this, they're gonna think Resident Evil is a joke. Listening to the dialogue, right? Maybe. But even still, the gameplay is almost buttery perfect, and I think there's more to lose than to gain from remaking Resident Evil 4. Now, if in my head I was to be remaking Resident Evil 4, I really wouldn't. Resident Evil 3 wasn't really a remake, it was a reimagining. But what I would do with Resident Evil 4 if I was to remake it, I'd redo all the assets. I'd keep the gameplay exactly how it is, but I'd redo all the assets. I'd do kind of what Nintendo did with Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. Listening to Ashley's voice is like asking to shoot me in the foot. I don't find Ashley annoying personally. I think she's not in the game for that long, and when you do have her, you can hide her in spots, so it's not that bad. Personally, that's just me. I don't know. A lot of people do complain about her. I don't find her that big of an issue. She's got ballistics. What are you gonna do? No, I don't find her that big of a problem. For me, I would redo all the assets with Resident Evil 4, with Resident Evil's RE engine that they use for 2 and 3 remakes. And I would just redo the whole game with those assets, with that engine graphically. Then I actually would make additions to the game. I don't know if you guys know Resident Evil 4's history of development, but there were actually many different versions of Resident Evil 4 before we got the final game. In trailers that we saw, areas that didn't even make it into the game, they scrapped the entire thing and said, let's just start over. And there were actually some really cool ideas in there. We had the hook guy, who was a hallucination. He didn't make it into the actual game because they said it was too Silent Hillsy. They were like, yo, I loved it when it was DMC. DMC is also a different version of Resident Evil 4. That is correct. But I think there were some cool ideas in some of the stuff that they scrapped, like the Hookman. Now, the Hookman, I wouldn't put him in the initial game. I wouldn't put him in the entire game. But there is a point in the game where Leon is having a hallucination of his veins turning red and his eyes turning red, and it looks like he's turning into one of the Ganados because of the parasite. I think right there is a perfect point where you could put a sort of like Leon's nightmare mission where he's like in his head fighting this hook guy and worried about becoming a monster his damn self. Then there's also this area in the initial trailer where Leon's like on an airship and he's fighting this Ouroboros tentacle monster thing that didn't make it into the final game, which might be where they got the inspiration of Resident Evil 5. I don't really know, but I kind of wouldn't mind if in that nightmare scenario he does visit that airship and then he does end up in some sort of mansion or castle-y mansion where he does fight this tentacle monster, and he is very much possessed by the Las Plagas virus. I think that's what I would do. I would, one, redo all the assets in the game. Would I give Leon the ability to move and shoot? Yes, I actually would. But I would make it so that when you're moving, your accuracy is rarely baby food. And then when you're standing still, your accuracy is Mondo Righteous. Now, if you add those things where aiming while you're stationary makes you extremely OP, I think the game can work to the extent of where it worked back then, where people would be inclined to not move and shoot because your accuracy would be really bad. Now, also, redoing the assets, the moving shooting, I would add moving and shooting just for first-time players to the Resident Evil series. And I would also throw back in those areas like the airship and the castle. There's a castle already in the game. I'd rather call it more of a Leon's nightmare scenario where you fight the hook guy in some sort of mansion-y castle thingy, and I would give him the fur coat that he kind of had in those initial trailers. I would make it pretty brief, but it would add about 2 more chapters to the game. That is to the extent of what I would do with it. Dialogue-wise, you could make the game more serious. You could make the game more serious like you made Resident Evil 2 and 3, and you make it more realistic. But what are you gonna do? You're gonna bring back the voice actor from Resident Evil 2's remake? he doesn't sound like an action hero, where Leon in Resident Evil 4 sounded like an action hero. He was my hero. There goes my hero. Watch him as no, you can't do that. You can't play Foo Fighters with a serious game like what it would be like if you were to remake it in the vein of Resident Evil 2 remake and Resident Evil 3 remake. You can't. It just doesn't work. Resident Evil 4 is supposed to be more goofy and B tone, and B movie toned. You know what I mean? We need RE4 because of cabrón desde de aquí. Detrás de ti, cabrón. Okay, I just understood what you said because I don't speak Spanish as well as you do. Alucard. Shout out to Ice Mage. He's from Colombia. But yes, I think not a remake, more of a remaster would be my route of going with it. An even better remaster, even though it would be the third time they remastered it. But what the jazz? Do it for The Rock. You know what I mean? But either way, I still feel like they shouldn't do it. If you really think about it, how many games from the PS2, GameCube, Xbox, original Xbox era are being remade nowadays? The reason they're not being remade that much is because those games play pretty well compared to modern standards. Whereas a PS1 game, a Nintendo 64 game, a Dreamcast game, they don't really play compared to modern standards because that's when games still had this arcadey feel to them. They still felt like you had to drop a quarter in to play, and you would get game over screens, and you would get you would have to start from the beginning if you died too much. There's not really too many games from the PS2 era that I would say need a remake. And there's not too many because a lot of them still play very close to modern standards. Resident Evil 2 got a remake, but hey, that's a PS1 game. Resident Evil 3 got a remake. Hey, that's a PS1 game. Metal Gear Solid 1 got a remake, but hey, that's a PS1 game. PS1 games, despite being 3D, they still had very arcadey sensibilities, and they still had very archaic design. Because even though they were 3D, they still were trying to learn how to make 3D games. There weren't too many games that play like 3D games where you can control the camera, where you can move around with analog precision. There wasn't too much of that. So it makes sense to remake a PS1, a Nintendo 64, or a Dreamcast game. That's why I say, why not go to Code Veronica? Why not wait a little longer until Resident Evil 4 feels a lot older? Resident Evil 4, you can play. It doesn't feel 15 years old. Other than the fact you can't move and shoot, it doesn't feel 15 years old. It might look it. I'll give you that. I look at the character models and I look at the textures and the backgrounds and the environment, and I say, yeah, you can fix that. But as far as pacing goes, as far as being a modern game, the game is flawless in that execution. That's why I'm like, they said the game is going to be remade in 2022, I think they said. So Resident Evil 8 is going to come out in 2021, and Resident Evil 4 Remake is going to come out 2022, which I'm like, that'll be a Resident Evil game every year for Capcom for the last 4 years. And I'm like, Capcom, why are you trying to drop so many Resident Evil games on a yearly basis? This ain't Call of Duty, bro. This ain't Call of Duty, bruh. This ain't Call of Duty, bro. Cut it out. But they like money. Resident Evil's making a lot of money. They're gonna Guitar Hero that jazz and burn it into the ground again. And it's gonna be like the same situation that they had before, where they just released too many Mega Man games back to back, too many Street Fighter games back to back, and too many Resident Evils back to back, because Capcom is some greedy mother jazzers. Maybe they need the money. Maybe they're not greedy. Maybe they just want to feed their families. But either way, it's more harm than good when you release a bad quality product. If there's any game from the PS2, GameCube, original Xbox era that I want remade, it probably would be Metal Gear Solid 3, just so you can give it over the shoulder aiming. But guess what? Resident Evil 4 already has that. Resident Evil 4 popularized that. Resident Evil 4 is the reason every third person shooter has over the shoulder aiming. Resident Evil 4 still is influencing every shooting game that's third person to this day. But enough about Resident Evil 4. Enough about it. I owe Ice Mage a blood sacrifice. I gotta freaking give him one. It's Bravery Arcade. We're playing Final Fantasy Quattro Remake.